Hello, welcome back to Rare Reads. As you can see, the shelves are starting to be depleted of their books. I have started, the move is kind of in progress. But I'm here, we'll do a vid. So this one is going to be on metafiction, so my kind of top recs of metafiction. Not ergodic fiction, so ergodic kind of is taking meta to the next kind of extreme, so that'll be things like House of Leaves, things like If on a Winter's Night, A Traveller, things like that. There's a load of videos out there on ergodic, and they all seem to cover the same stuff, so I'm going to try and do something a bit different with this on my top meta picks. So we'll start with what do we mean by metafiction? So I'll give you my definition, and then I'll also find one online and I'll put it here and you can see which one you prefer. So I would define metafiction as writing about writing. So it might be a book about a writer, and you might get the book itself and then framing another kind of text or multiple texts kind of thing. So stories within the stories kind of thing. Quite often unreliable narrators, quite often you're not sure, is this a memoir? Is this the writer actually writing about themselves? Or is it a completely made up character? So lots of kind of sort of blurring the lines between what's real and what's fiction, and making us question, and starting to Google things like, is there a real this or a real that or whatever. So that's how I would define, metafiction. It's one of my favourite kind of genre, if you can call it a genre, or is it more of a style? I don't know. A lot of people find it quite pretentious and really I think it's quite a kind of, it divides readers, I think, this style or this genre. But yeah, I love it, and I'm going to talk about 5 of my faves. So the first number one that I'll talk about then is, I don't own a copy of this because I borrowed it from the library, and it's by a writer called Will Carver, a British writer. He's a crime writer, really, Will Carver, and crime is not really my thing. But I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was so clever. So Suicide Thursday. It's about Eli. It's narrated by a character called Eli. He's a writer, but he's got writer's block, and he only can write the first chapter of anything, and then he kind of gets stuck, and so he'll start another first chapter. So he's just got a bunch of these first chapters. We do get extracts from. So multi-layered, narratives is a big thing with metafiction. So you do get extracts from these first chapters. Then you also get, we've got a love triangle going on. So you've got Eli, his friend Mike, and then his girlfriend Jackie. And they're sort of in this kind of love, because she's very close to both of them. And you get text messages as well going between these characters and other characters as well. It's very much an unreliable narrator. It very much keeps you guessing. To the end. It's got a great ending. It's just a really clever twist or take on a crime novel, if you like unreliable narrators, if you like kind of really dark stuff. It is very dark. Obviously there is the theme of suicide is in there. There is a character that does complete suicide, but that is in the title, so I'm not going to think I'm doing any kind of spoilers or anything in there. Great book, great read. I really enjoyed it, and I'm not a crime fan, so I think that's got to be a kind of thumbs up, hasn't it, for Will Carver there, for kind of getting me on board with one of his crime novels. So that's my first, and definitely would recommend it, and I would definitely put it in tier 4. Okay, number 2 then is Adrian Mole, The Weapons of Mass Destruction, by Sue Townsend. I think Sue Townsend, one of my favourite writers, and I think Sue Townsend and Victoria Wood, you can't overestimate what they've done for British comedy. I think they're absolute goats, the both of them. This is his diary, so straight away it's a work of fiction that is posing as an autobiography, or as a memoir, right, which is autobiographical is non-fiction, or at least narrative non-fiction. So straight away we are straying into the realms of meta, right? But we've talked about this, layers upon layers and kind of text within text. So it's not just this straight, just a diary and is just kind of, his day-to-day thing. You also do get multiple other texts within it. So including poetry. So Adrian Mole famously writes bad poetry. So he is a member of this writing group, which I think is called the Leicester and Rutland Creative Writing Group that he's a member of. And in that writing group, you've got someone called Gladys, and she is frequently just reading out her He complains sometimes that she takes up too much of the group's time reading out her cat poetry, which he finds, quite sort of beneath him sort of thing. So things like, poor Black is up in heaven, God took her life away. He said you'll go to Devon and have a holiday. Once there, you'll find your pussy friends. Their ghosts do walk the prom. Here are Ginger, Ming and Fluff, Marmalade and Tom. So that's one of kind of Gladys's bad poems, which he, like I say, sees as being like very much beneath him. But then we get some of his poetry, which is, I would say, at least just as bad. Here's one, and it's about Tony Blair. Mr. Blair, you have nice hair. You blink a lot to show you care. Dictators quail and tyrants wince. Prime Minister, you are a prince. So that's just one of his bad poems. So we've got poems within the diary. We've then also got quite a lot of letters. So he is a prolific letter writer. Adrian Mole, he will write letters of complaint to the BBC. He'll write letters to his bank manager. So there is a bank manager letter in here somewhere. He also receives letters, for instance, from his son Glenn, who's gone off to war, and writes him some letters as well. But my favourite letters are, so there are some letters that he writes to, I think she's called Melanie, this person that he impregnates. Marigold, sorry, she's not Melanie, she's Marigold. And he's kind of trying to worm his way out of marrying her. He's supposed to be getting married to her. And so he writes her letters trying to get out of this marriage. So there's one that goes, Dear Marigold, can I be honest with you? The man you know as Adrian Mole is an imposter. I have been on the run since I was falsely accused of violating a dolphin off the Cornish coast, which is just absolutely bonkers. And then you've got another one that goes, this is a letter I hoped I would never have to write. For some years I have been suffering from a rare medical condition which produces a murderous rage, which in turn makes me prone to sudden fits of violence. I have been secretly taking a cure, but alas, I've been told by a specialist in my condition, there's no hope. The specialist has advised me not to marry. I quote, no woman is safe with you, Mr. Mole. You must reconcile yourself with living alone. Very, very funny. Very much metafiction. Adrian Mole, highly recommend it. But I must just do one other thing before I move on. I could just go all day about this. One other bit. You may remember Adrian Mole in one of the earlier books. He actually has a TV show somehow called Awfully Good. But the show gets axed, and he obviously bears a grudge about this. He's got a grievance over it. But he does very much see himself as being, a sort of a celebrity who's been cast out and treated very badly by the media. So he decides he's going to write a book about celebrity called Celebrity Madness. And he writes letters to real celebrities such as Jordan, such as David Beckham, asking them to take part and be interviewed for this book. And this is a snippet from the letter that he writes to Jordan. So he asks her if she'll take part, and then he goes, by the way, I was talking with my father about your breasts recently. We both agreed that they are very intimidating. My father said a man could fall into that cleavage and not be found for days. My friend Parvez described them as being like weapons of mass destruction, and my chiropractor predicted you would suffer from lower back problems. So can't recommend these highly enough. They are such good fun. She is genius of comedy, Sue Townsend, and doesn't get enough. I don't think she ever got enough recognition, really. Okay, next one is number 3, The World According to Garp by John Irvin. John Irvin is my favourite writer of all time. You've probably heard me saying that before if you've been watching the channel. I do think he is the greatest writer that's ever lived. I know that's a really big thing to say, but I do think that. And if I was just reading bits of this today when I was kind of planning it out, doing my notes and stuff, I'd love to go back and read these all again, and I would even more love to go back to a time when I'd never discovered him and just discover him anew again and read them. You're lucky if you've not discovered him, and please, if you haven't, go away after this and go and go and pick one up and start reading him. I can't recommend him highly enough. And this is perhaps one of his most famous. It has been adapted to a TV, or was it a film, actually, I think. And so this is very much about a writer writing about, being a writer. And that is what he does a lot, So first of all, within this story of Garp, you have got the story that Garp's mother tells to him about how he came to be. And this is another often recurring kind of theme in John Irving, is the theme of identity and characters who don't know their biological origins, or one of their parents they don't know where they, their background kind of thing. So with this one, the mother has made up this story that she tells him about how he came to be. Which is very simply, and it is a very, very, very short, little, simple thing, which just goes, number one, the father of Garp was a soldier, number two, the war killed him, and number three, who took the time for a wedding when there was a war. So that is basically his origins story. So one of the things that he is preoccupied with is, knowing more about his father, and questioning whether or not that is true, what his mum's told him. You then get, within this book, there is his book that made him kind of famous, that kind of launched him. So he's quite a famous kind of writer in this book, he's a famous novelist. And his debut book was called Pensiongill Plaza, that he wrote when he went on a trip, I think, to Vienna. Vienna is a place that crops up a lot in John Irving books. And so it's very much that thing of, he's written a great book as his first novel, and he kind of can't get past that. He's constantly trying to, outdo his own success kind of thing, and feeling that he's always going to come up short. And you do get chunks of Pensiongill Plaza within this book. So we're straight away, we are in that kind of metafiction territory. He then writes another book that again is referenced in here, which is called The Second Wind of the Cuckold, which doesn't go down quite so well. And we get within this narrative letters that are sent to him, fan letters, and also letters like this one, which very much isn't a fan letter, which goes, "Dear shithead, I have read your novel. You seem to find other people's problems very funny. I have seen your picture with your fat head of hair. I suppose you can laugh at bald persons. And in your cruel book, you laugh at people who can't have orgasms, and people who aren't blessed with happy marriages, and people whose wives and husbands are unfaithful to each other. You ought to know that persons who have these problems do not think everything is so funny. Look at the world, shithead. It is a bed of pain," etc., etc. So so you've got letters within here written to him, written to his writer persona. But because he is a writer himself, it does make you start to question, is this actually autobiographical? I believe he has visited or lived in Venice for some time. So again, you're wondering, is it partly autobiographical kind of, so you're questioning all the time which bits might be real and which bits are, purely made up. And then you also get, he writes a story at one point called Vigilance, and you can see here. So this is a whole story. You just get a whole short story called Vigilance that he's given to his girlfriend, lover. I think she's some kind of critic, or maybe she works in a university or something like that. And he's given her this story for her to critique. And so you actually kind of are waiting with him. He's handed it over. He's waiting for her to read it. And she's kind of going, "Oh no, let's just go to bed instead," kind of thing. But no, he's like waiting, agonising over what she's going to say about it. And we also are, because we actually get the whole thing, we are also put in the same position where we're waiting to find out what she thinks of it. Obviously, she doesn't like to get that much. Absolutely brilliant book, very funny, incredibly clever. He is the best plotter out there, even if you don't like, everything that he does. You can't argue that, he's an actual master of plots. And yet, if you are so lucky if you've never read a John Irving, because you can have that pleasure of reading them all from scratch kind of thing, whereas I can't do that anymore. Although I did really enjoy revisiting this one. Right, the next one is Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. I haven't read any Kurt Vonnegut for quite a long time. I went through a phase when I was at uni of being just obsessed with him. And so I'd kind of forgotten how brilliant this is, actually. I'd love to go back and read. If only I had time to go back and read novels that I've already read. So this is described on the back as a miraculous weaving of science fiction, memoir, parable, fairy tale, and farce, and is of course hilarious. I very much could have put this in my list of 5 absurd picks. So Kurt Vonnegut, actually he was born in 1922, and he actually was a prisoner of war during the Second World War. And I think kind of the only way that he can make sense of that, or make sense of the world, is to just make fun of it. And that kind of is absurdism. So this very much does fit into that, absurdist fiction as well. So there is a crossover there. So I'm going to get mixed up here. I know I am, because there's so many names for me to, I'm not good with names. But basically it starts off this book where you get a preface. And in the preface, it's got my notes still in it, look, from when I was at uni. In the preface, basically says the expression breakfast of champions is a registered trademark of General Mills, Inc. for use of breakfast cereal product. The use of the identical expression as the title for this book is not intended to indicate an association with General Mills. So the first thing I did, as soon as I started reading it, I was like, oh, is that real? So straight away, this book is starting to make you question, has he made these things up, or is it real? So straight away, we're in the realms of metafiction, yeah? He then goes on to talk about Phoebe Hurty. She's no longer living. She was an Indianapolis widow, and I met her in the Great Depression. I was 16 or so, and she was about 40. So if you Google this, yeah, she was a real person. She worked on, I think, like a magazine or something that Vonnegut wrote for, or she was maybe in some marketing agency or something that he made ads for, something like that. And he used to hang around with her kids, I think. So because we've got, at the beginning, this preface where we are very much grounded in reality, the references he is making are real. So it sort of sets you up then to think, the rest, what is going to come is, so this is where it talks about on the back about it being a weaving of memoir. So it does make you think you're in some kind of memoir territory. Then you get, at the end of this preface, he signs it off, Phil Boyd Studge. Now this is a pseudonym. So this is a persona of himself. So we're starting to get straight away this multi-layered thing of, we've got a writer, we've got a persona of the writer in the text, yeah? So even just within the first few pages, it's really complex, really, really complex. Then the next layers that we get then is that there are 2 characters in this book. Kilgore Trout, who is a science fiction writer. And so there we are straight away thinking, is this Kurt Vonnegut, or is this a version of Kurt Vonnegut? Yeah, is this another pseudonym persona? Yeah, Kurt Vonnegut, science fiction writer. We've got a science fiction writer that he is writing about, and he writes about his books, his texts. So there is one that is called Now It Can Be Told, which basically, the premise of this book is humans are actually robots, and there is only one human who is not a robot, and there is only one human with free will. So there is very much a theme of free will and determinism in this book, yeah? Then the other character who it's about, there's 2 main characters, the other, so it's sort of like a dual narrative kind of thing, is a guy called Dwayne Hoover. Dwayne Hoover meets Kilgore Trout, the writer of this Now It Can Be Told, at a convention, like an arts convention, where Kilgore Trout is promoting his book, and he does some readings and things like that. Dwayne Hoover reads the book, gets obsessed with it, and starts to believe, he's already edging into the realms of madness anyway. We are told at the very beginning of the book that, he is verging on madness. Dwayne Hoover, he's a man who has not really got a grip on sanity. So he believes that this book is real, and he believes that he is the only human who is not a robot. And the only way that he can prove that is to, basically go around taking out these robots. He ends up in prison, basically. So we get sort of extracts of this book that are written from prison. So highly complicated straight away in terms of a science fiction writer writing about a science fiction writer who has written a book that somebody else reads and then is influenced by and believes to be reality. So straight away we are very much in that realm of questioning what is real and what is fiction in this book. But then you do get reality as well, bits that are reality. So for instance, you get this where he's talking about American school kids being conditioned in terms of their history education and American history, and being told, that in 1492, that's when the white Americans discovered America, and that there were nobody living there before that. So he's obviously questioning this. You could read this as being, you know, some Americans would call this, I think, anti-American, and it was quite, you know, in the 60s or 70s when, you know, when this, I think it was 60s actually when this is first published 1973. Sorry. So, you know, Vietnam War. I'm sure he would have been accused of anti-Americanism. But obviously now he's a really, you know, much loved American, or probably one of the most loved American authors. But yeah, so he clearly is sort of questioning that history. Yeah. So you get, you know, real dates, real facts. You also get lots and lots of images of, you know, real things, like there's a beetle there. There's one point where he does a drawing of an apple and things. At one point he draws a medal, and it's Mary Alice Miller's medal, Olympic medal. I went and Googled that. She was a real person. She was a real athlete. So we have got some real details in there. And these kind of, you know, little graphic drawings that again lends itself more to, you know, fact rather than fiction. You also get, there's a lot of tombstones, little drawings of tombstones in this book as well. So this is the tombstone and he's kind of going into the future here, because actually the date of his death on this is 1981, but he wrote the book in 1973. And he's saying that this would be, you know, the tombstone that would be erected to him by the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, which probably at the time, I don't know if they would have been that favourable about this text. So he's maybe been a little bit sort of tongue-in-cheek there, maybe. But then also you get this tombstone that is Kilgore Trout's, what he would envision as being his own tombstone, which is just somebody, sometime to sometime, he tried. So it's this really multi-layered, you know, thing that really does kind of, your head could explode with, you know, God, you know, he's such a genius, or was, sorry, such a genius to have, you know, come up with, you know, the idea for this. And to have come up with multiple books as well that were at least as clever as this. You know, Slaughterhouse-Five, obviously absolute, you know, iconic, you know, work of American fiction. I must just say though, before I finish, I've been saying about Drew Gummerson that, you know, I can't compare him to anybody. I know he has been compared to Vonnegut by other readers. I didn't realise until I started looking back at some of my Vonnegut books. This is an asshole. And so, yeah, Vonnegut does a lot of butthole, asshole jokes as well. And I'm sure that he would be one of, you know, Drew Gummerson's influences, as he has obviously influenced lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of writers, because he is such a legend. If you've not checked out any Kurt Vonnegut, this would be a good place to start. Also, Slaughterhouse-Five would be a good place to start as well. Okay, my last pick. I really hope that this might be something that people haven't come across, and that it encourages people to go and check this out. This book is called The Deconstruction of Professor Thrubb, and it's by D.D. Johnston, who I believe is a Scottish writer. Pretty sure he is. So I came across this when I did my MA with the University of Hull. And D.D. Johnston did at one point give a bit of a talk about this, and he did a bit of a reading from it on one of our workshops. So that's kind of, yeah, that's how I came across it. I absolutely loved it. It's probably my second favourite thing that I read during my MA, or that was on the reading list anyway. My first would have been Remains of the Day. So this book is straight away throws you, right? Because it starts with this, as though it is the cover page of someone's PhD thesis. The life and times of Elsie Angela Netta Stewart. Free will and determinism, that's cropping up again like it did with Vonnegut. And so, yeah, so straight away you're thinking, oh, this doesn't look like fiction, yeah? We then get an acknowledgements page where he is addressing the examiners, which he does frequently. It's a bit like, you know, in Jane Austen where she goes, dear reader. In here, he's going examiners, and he keeps on frequently addressing the examiners as though he is, you know, as though this is his PhD thesis. So straight away that is throwing us and making it feel more like reality rather than fiction. We then get an author declaration as well, where he then introduces a text that he has. So he basically is explaining in here that his idea for his PC, or his premise for his PhD thesis, came from him stumbling across a photocopied page, which we get included. It's here. So he stumbles across this, I think when he's on an airplane flight or something like that, I think he is when he gets the idea. And he comes across a photocopied page from Francois Barrett's La Révolution Libertaire d'Espagne, right? So a lot of this is about the Spanish Revolution, or part of it. It's a dual narrative. It's part of it is about this PhD student who has become fascinated with this woman and he's trying to sort of track her down or track her family down, or find out more about her story. And then you've got her actual story. So you've got a dual narrative. So straight away I went and looked this up and it's real, right? So that is real. But then he mentions other things that are not real, right? So he talks about Elsie's son, George, an article that he wrote called, for the newsletter, the Heritage newsletter of the Historical Society of North West Scotland and Hebridean Islands. And then he also references, and so his supervisor is, so the Professor Thrubb, that is his PhD supervisor. So he's a university doctor, lecturer. And so he talks about also this article, Leave Our Dicks Alone, the Spectre of the Real in the Market Stalinist Post-Fordist Academy, which broke Professor Thrubb's decade-long publishing silence and marked his retirement from education. So straight away we're getting that multi-layered, kind of thing that we associate with metafiction. So as we get further into the text itself then, we learn more about Elsie and it starts to tell Elsie's story. And she has a little romance with this guy called Ramon. They are young lovers in this story, but the war is kind of pulling them apart, the revolution. And there's a bit where she loses she's got a letter, that's all that she's got of his, and there's a bit where she loses the letter and she goes back searching for this letter. So again, a letter is a text, obviously. So you've got this, quite tender kind of love story at the heart of this book. And, will she find him? Will she find Ramon? And will they be reunited? That is at the heart of it. So it does have a heart. There are moments of kind of, poignancy. It is very much kind of tragicomic, territory. But we are very much in the realm of the absurd as well. And you can see the word absurd is repeated several times very early on in the book. That's at the top of chapter 1. Yeah. So then within this text, which may or may not be a PhD thesis or maybe a novel, you get things like this, which is basically extracts from sociology textbooks. You get things like this, which is posing as an article about the Isle of Skye, which is posing as being written by Elsie's son George. There is a point where the narrator goes to the Isle of Skye to do kind of further research. You've got things like this. I don't even know what that is, actually. There's just a fragment there. So you do get some, fragments of texts. So it is, it's just peppered through with, and this look, So it's just peppered with these kind of fragments, and it's almost as if, like, as I remember it, because it's a while since I read this, and I read a lot of books and my memory is not brilliant. I don't have like a, photographic memory like some readers do. As I remember it, the way that I sort of interpreted this was, he's a student, he is writing his thesis, he's obsessed with this story, the narrative of Elsie, which he is kind of constructing within, so that's the novel itself is her story, that's the kind of most, I guess, conventional, storyline. But then it's kind of, I suppose, about when you are immersing yourself in a thesis, in a PhD thesis, you are going to be, reading a lot, and you're going to be reading fragments and bits of all sorts of other, kind of text, fiction and non-fiction kind of thing, to use as, references and whatever. So I read it as though it's kind of like, this is his kind of scatterbrained, kind of mind in the way that it's sort of, he's got all of these fragments going on, and this is how it's impacting on him, is in terms of he's struggling to sort of organise his thoughts, and so he therefore is kind of losing his grip on reality. That's how I kind of, read it. I don't think that's how you're supposed to read it. I can't not talk about this though. So there are a series of emails in this. So he talks, there's a lot about where he's kind of trying to see his supervisor, this Professor Thrubb, who's just this really belligerent kind of character. Every time he seems to try to want to have a meeting with him or anything, he can't get to see him. He's just like this really, mad, eccentric, but very belligerent as well character. And so there's a series of, quite a few actually, emails at one point where he gets home one day and he's kind of dreading having an email from Professor Thrubb because he's dreading his critique that he might get back from the bit of his PhD that he's submitted to him for critique or for feedback. So it starts off with the email that he's sent saying that, he feels that he's making good progress. Then you get, so this is where he's trying to delay looking at Thrubb's email. He knows it's there, he can see it in his inbox, but he's kind of going through all of this kind of just much more mundane stuff. So you get one that's come from Sue Highchair, which I think is a great name. Dear colleagues, I've been advised by the Estates Department that as from now, today and henceforth, I am to enforce the removal of all individual electric fans. They are not permitted in university rooms and offices. So you get that. Then you get one from Hannah Unfung. The original form could not be passed at the Research Council Advisory Team subgroup meeting in July as it did not carry your supervisor's signature. A new copy of the form needs to be submitted. So you get this really kind of, you get a sense of the real, the ridiculous bureaucracy. It's a bit Kafkaesque, I suppose, in places. And anybody that's done a university degree or worked in education will know this is how education is. There is an awful lot of ridiculous red tape and bureaucracy. You then get another one from, this is from Ben Godturn, this one's from. Staff on the higher floors of Smethwick House, in terms of access to tea and coffee making facilities, they mustn't use certain areas for, it's about not going up and down the stairs with tea and coffee, and that they must go and down and use the kitchen on the ground floor or something. So these very kind of mundane, back and forth emails of very little consequence sort of thing. And then you get one from A. Gunthorpe to announce the launch of the university's new enterprise strategy as approved by the Future Visions Entrepreneurial Initiative Working Group. What a blooming mouthful. About their 5 mission points. I won't bore you with the 5 mission points. And then you get another one from Sue Highchair, the health and safety manager advice. It may well be that we have to close the kitchen to all staff and they must go to the refectory for their drinks because we've got too many people going on the stairs with drinks. And then you get to Professor Thrubb's email, which goes like this. What is this? Angela's fucking ashes? This is the most platitudinous, boring crap I have ever tried to read. What the fuck's an electronic signature? In the meantime, desist from using personal pronouns. He tells him not to use personal pronouns, which is perhaps the only bit of constructive criticism that he gets, to which the student responds like this. We get this. At one point, the examiners are questioning him about this that he includes as part of his thesis. And he says, I'm trying to avoid using personal pronouns or other grammatical structures that imply originative action. This was his first book, D&D Johnston, and I think, it is so accomplished for a first book. It was put out by Barbican Press, I think. It's a brilliant read. I don't know really anybody else that's read it. I've never come across anybody else that's read it. I know a lot of people find things like this quite pretentious, but if you like this kind of thing where you've got lots and lots and lots of references, where it's quite pseudo-intellectual, I suppose it is a bit pseudo-intellectual. If you like that kind of thing, if that's your bag, then I would highly recommend it because I don't think this gets anywhere near enough, has had anywhere near enough, kind of attention. And like I say, if you've read it, do comment me and let me know, because I'd love to meet somebody else or talk to somebody else that's read it and see what they thought about it. Probably just other MA students, I'm guessing. Right, so that's it. Of course, I could have included in this Flann O'Brien's The Third Policeman, one of my favourite books of all time. I also could have included it in my absurdist list as well. It would fit into so many different lists, this would. I'm kind of holding back because there's another list that I want to include this on. I am going to do my bunker books, my kind of, books that I would be happy to die reading kind of thing. Ones for the apocalypse, ones to really treasure and go back to. So I'll save it for that. But it very much is metafiction as well as being, absurd, an absurdist masterpiece as well. So yeah, just a little kind of nod to that before I go. Thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe. My next one will probably be a review of this that I've nearly finished. It's a great collection of short stories by Sean McNulty. So yeah, that probably will be my next review next week. Until then, goodbye, take care, keep reading, and yeah, please do subscribe, and thanks for watching.